In a dressing room, Jack stood staring at the shadow of a woman as she sat in front of him, smiling before embracing her from behind. "Jack, let me finish my makeup," she said. "Just like this you are already very beautiful. No need to add more makeup. This is more than enough to amaze everyone." He replied, "No, Jack, enough is not enough for me. I want to look perfect, not only stunning, but also to captivate everyone's heart." Jack moved in front of his girlfriend, Sophie, and knelt down. "Thank you so much for accepting me," he said, his voice full of emotion. "Sometimes I think that you are an angel. I can't believe a perfect woman like you is getting engaged to a pizza delivery man like me. Especially since you even booked this hotel for our engagement. I promise I will work harder to make you happy." He kissed her hand tenderly. "Jack, I know you will," Sophie said confidently. "Now head out to greet the guests. I invited all my friends for this unforgettable night." Jack nodded in understanding, the thought of all the bad treatment he had received making him a little nervous. He stood up and, with a deep breath, began to walk towards the hotel hall. His heart was beating faster and faster with each step. Jack nervously grabbed the door handle, the creaking sound of the old hinges echoing through the hall. He looked out to the guests, who all stood still and stared back at him. Taking a deep breath, he tried to steady his nerves and calmly loosen the ribbon on his blazer. "Sophie will be here any minute," he murmured. "No, they came to the party not to insult me," he added softly. "Jack!" Lady Glover's voice was a shrill shriek that echoed through the room, causing a momentary silence. She approached with her mouth agape, her eyes wide with shock. "Wow, Jack Marshall, is this really you?" She looked him up and down, taking in his appearance. Jack blushed, smiling bashfully as he remembered his earlier self-praise in front of the mirror. As a pizza delivery man, he had to admit he cut an impressive figure in his pristine white coat. "You certainly don't look like a typical pizza delivery man," remarked one of the guests, her eyes widening as she took in Jack's smart attire. Grace Hogan, Sophie's friend, then interjected, her sarcasm clear as she added, "But this man still is delivering pizza." This comment caused some guests to stifle their laughter. Another woman then sauntered up to Jack, her lips curved into a crooked smile. "If you and Sophie were to tie the knot," she asked, her voice laced with jest, "how do you plan to provide for her? Are you going to serve pizza for every meal?" All the guests burst into laughter this time. As Sophie's friends, relatives, and colleagues whispered about Jack, Mary spoke up, her words dripping with rudeness. "Mary, what you said was incredibly rude. We're in a 5-star hotel after all. This is an engagement ceremony, not a time for judging someone's financial standing. Who knows? Jack might be a billionaire underneath all his poverty." "Billionaire? Well, we all know Sophie is footing the bill for this engagement. Jack hasn't even paid his rent at the boarding house. Is that really true? That's so unfortunate. Listen, Jack, after this is all over, why don't you come to my house and take care of my dog's waste? And I'll give you some compensation for your time." The laughter of the invitees grew even louder. Jack clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. He desperately wanted to shout out, but he had to keep his composure. After all, the person he was planning to marry wasn't any of the people in the room, but Sophie Parker, a beautiful and kind woman. "Look, it looks like our pizza delivery man is getting upset. What if he gets too mad and refuses to deliver pizza to my house anymore? Don't worry. Jack is a very patient person. He would never turn down a delivery to your house. He would even do anything to get some money, like buying sanitary pads for you, changing your grandmother's diapers, or even acting as a guard dog and barking in front of your house." This time, Jack's jaw clenched tightly. He had been living a difficult life, and as a result, he was forced to take on any side jobs in order to survive. These included grocery shopping, assisting with elderly care in a nursing home, and looking after pets while their owners were out of town. "Why don't you go ahead and enjoy the meal while you're waiting for Sophie to arrive?" Jack suggested, attempting to be amicable despite the fact that he had been frequently insulted by his own girlfriend since the start of their relationship. "Of course, we were hoping to get a glass of wine, but the waiters seemed to be busy with their tasks. So, Jack, would you be able to get us something to drink? I know you usually help out the customers of the pizza shop, right? Jack looked at his best friend with a stern expression, but then he smiled. Absolutely. Just give me a moment and I'll take care of it. Jack swung around and headed to the bar to get some drinks. If it wasn't for the fact that he was aware of how much Sophie cherished her friends, she would have lectured them sternly to help them focus. Soon after, Jack returned with a serving tray that held 3 glasses of wine. Despite his strained expression, he handed the glasses to Lady Glover, Grace, and Mary. Jack felt the need to take a breather and escape the situation before his patience ran out, as he knew that a commotion was inevitable if he stayed. He wanted to be sure that Sophie wasn't embarrassed by his reaction, so he decided to go and see her first. When Jack looked back, he was shocked to see that Sophie's 3 friends had emptied their glasses of wine on him and were laughing uproariously in unison. "Oh no, Jack. I apologize for you being soaked like this. I suggest you change into your pizza delivery uniform. You look far more handsome in it than in this suit anyway. Indeed, you wouldn't want to get engaged to Sophie while you're all wet, would you? She'd be embarrassed to be your girlfriend like this." "Stop!" All heads swiveled towards the source of the noise, which soon became apparent to be Sophie. She had appeared in the entrance, wearing a stunning white dress, and with her eyebrows furrowed in a frown. Her gaze was fierce, and her eyes a deep red. She hurriedly made her way over to Jack and the group of her companions. Sophie sternly pointed her finger at each of her friends in turn. "You need to be more careful with what you say." Jack sadly smiled, placing his hand gently on his beloved's arm. "Now, Sophie, try to stay calm. No more. From this moment on, I don't want to hear anyone referring to me as your girlfriend, Jack." What?" he stammered. "Yes, that's right. We are breaking up. I'm sorry, Jack, but I can't be with you any longer, either as your fiancée or as your girlfriend." The guests began to murmur amongst themselves as Sophie's 3 best friends exchanged knowing smiles. "What's wrong? Did I do something to offend you?" Jack said, his smile tinged with bitterness. Sophie shook her head in response. "Then what? Jack, think about it. What woman of high social standing would risk her entire future for a pizza delivery man, whose salary isn't even enough to cover my electricity bill?" Jack's eyes widened as he felt a sharp pain in his chest. In a strained voice, he started to say, "But you said I don't care about wealth, social class, and all that stuff?" Sophie cut in. "Listen, only an idiot would take those words seriously. If you're not serious, what is the purpose of this event?" Sophie's eyes widened in shock as she exclaimed, "To announce our breakup. From this moment on and onwards, I'm no longer your boyfriend." "Got it." Though Jack's heart was breaking, he knelt down and held Sophie's hand with his trembling fingers, sweet memories of their time together flashing through his mind. A faint glimmer of hope shone in Jack's eyes as he looked up to see his girlfriend. "Sophie, I beg you, let me be your boyfriend. I truly love you." Suddenly, there was a sound of applause from the stairs. "That's great, Sophie. I'm so happy," the man said, a broad smile on his face. "I am thoroughly satisfied with this entertainment." Jack looked straight at Sophie. The woman who, a few seconds ago, had become his ex-girlfriend, smiled broadly. "Does that mean we're officially dating now?" Jack's heart sank as he heard Sophie's unexpected query. Unperturbed, the attractive man answered confidently, "Yes, absolutely." He then put his arm around her waist in Jack's presence without any hesitation. "Like I said, if you make me have a good time, then I will take you on as my partner," he added. "Stop!" yelled Jack, taking a step forward and pushing the man away with considerable force as he was about to kiss Sophie on the lips. The man stumbled backwards, barely keeping his balance. "Jack, what's wrong with you? How dare you push my boyfriend?" Sophie said, her voice full of annoyance. She then walked over to David, concerned in her eyes. "David, are you okay?" Jack's heart was shattered. This was the first time Sophie had ever lashed out and called him a lunatic. The woman he loved so deeply had betrayed him in the name of her future. His genuine love had been reduced to nothing more than a mere distraction. He gritted his teeth and shot an icy glare at Sophie's new partner. It was David Gillen, a financial manager at the prestigious company Big Road Group. Not only did David have a successful career, he was also from one of the most affluent families in Rhineland. His parents owned a 3-story optical shop house in the Rudenberg Highway business complex. In other words, being in a relationship with him was seen as a sign of potential prosperity. "Jack, this is your last chance. Get out of here now," shouted Sophie. "Please, I'm begging you. Reconsider your decision. Everyone knows he's just using you for a good time. He doesn't really care about you." "That's enough," exclaimed Sophie. "You're so clueless, Jack, trying to act like you're above everyone else while you're really down below. If you don't leave at this instant, I'm calling the security guard to come and get you out." David smiled reassuringly at Shopai, holding her shoulder gently. "No need to kick your ex out. I'm going to make sure he learns a lesson," he said, his grin widening. Then he shouted, "You guys, give that pizza delivery man a good beating." A group of burly men instantly circled Jack. They began to ruthlessly pummel him, and Jack put up no resistance whatsoever. His gaze was fixed on Sophie, who watched the scene with a frown on her face. Amidst the sound of punches and kicks, groans of pain could be heard. Finally, Jack was taken down by a heavy kick to the back. Jack lay helpless, his face and temples drenched with his own blood. Despite his condition, he still managed to focus his gaze on Sophie. David then stepped forward, raising his leg high into the air. "Take this," he shouted. The other guests all averted their eyes as David brought his foot down hard, his shoe stopping just shy of Jack's nose. "Be thankful that my heart is content tonight, for if it wasn't, your face would be imprinted with my shoe marks." David gave Jack a shove with his foot, sending him toppling onto his back. "Shopai," Jack said. David's face contorted with rage as he heard Jack speak his beloved's name. He swiftly stuffed his hands into his pockets before viciously stamping on Jack's stomach. "Don't you ever mention Shopai with that filthy mouth of yours." He dug his foot further into Jack's abdomen, making him cry out in agony. The guests in the room were visibly disturbed, covering their mouths with both hands in shock. "You guys, take this jerk out of here." The buff men who had just beaten Jack grabbed him and dragged him out. The doors to the hall were shut behind him, resonating with a thud. As Jack sat in the hallway, dejected and forlorn, his thoughts drifted to Shopai. Struggling to his feet, he leaned heavily against the wall as he slowly made his way outside. A kind-hearted hotel maid saw his condition and offered to help him, but Jack refused, shaking his head at the bellboy's offer to call him a taxi. Jack stumbled away, and as he walked, all he could think of was Sophie. He lamented his misfortune and wished that if only he had a better family background, he and Sophie would be exchanging rings in the hotel's banquet hall at that very moment. "Lord, just give me one miracle, and I will show them all," he thought with a wry smile. As he left the hotel, a sigh escaped his lips. He had no money to pay for a taxi. At that moment, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz car pulled up to Jack. Two powerfully built men stepped out. Compared to the men who had beaten him earlier, these men were clearly more imposing. "If money's what you're after, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I've already spent my paycheck on this suit, and now it's drenched in wine and my own blood. But if you want it, take it." Jack was about to take off his jacket in frustration, when the two men suddenly bowed respectfully in his direction. "Young master," they said. "What?" Jack was taken aback, surprised by the request. One of the men spoke up. "Young master, come with us. We have something important to discuss." But Jack refused, shaking his head. "No, you won't gain anything by kidnapping me. I am alone and very, very poor," he said. The man then smiled kindly. "No, young master, come with us to meet your grandfather. Master Rudenberg has been searching for you for decades." "Mr. Rudenberg? The richest conglomerate in this country is looking for me? How come?" "Young master is the grandson of Mr. Tom Rudenberg. You are the sole heir of the Rudenberg family. Jack's jaw dropped to the ground before laughing out loud. It was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard. If only he really was the grandson of Tom Rudenberg, Sophie would not have dumped him so cruelly. Look, my heart will definitely explode if what you guys say is true. But thank you, because of you now I know that I can still laugh. Too bad I'm not the person you're looking for. My name is Jack Marshall. Jack held the shoulder of one of the men in front of him. I'm sorry, mate, but I really don't have any relation with the Rudenberg family. May Mr. Rudenberg's grandson be found soon. Jack tapped the man on the shoulder a few times before leaving. However, the two men called out in unison, "Young master!" Jack turned around with an annoyed face. He was so tired of the bitter reality that was strangling him tonight. If it wasn't for his late mother's message, he would probably already be depressed. Gentlemen, I beg you, let me go. Now I am physically and mentally weak. As for tomorrow, I have a lot of pizza to deliver. One of the men fished something out of his pocket. It was a photo. He handed it to Jack. Look at this photo, young master. Jack lazily accepted the photo. His brow furrowed at the sight of the portrait in the photo. Where did you get my photo? A moment later, Jack spoke again. Wait, who is this woman? I don't know her. How can I take a photo with her? Jack scratched his head, which didn't itch. That's not a photo of young master, but a photo of your parents. What? It seems today that word is Jack's favorite. Young master, look at this photo. Jack received another photo. It was like a family photo. There was an old man, the married couple who were in the previous photo, and a servant holding a boy about 3 years old. From the photo, there are at least two people he knew, namely Tom Rudenberg, who was indeed famous as a successful businessman, and the other one was. This is my mother. No, that's your nanny. What? Jack was trying hard not to pass out. The woman he had thought for decades to be his mother turned out to be his nanny. It can't be true. We understand, young master. Therefore, come with us. Mr. Rudenberg will explain everything to you. A Mercedes-Benz pulled over at one end of the alley. A burly man then came down to open the door. Jack was seen getting out of the car carrying a black plastic bag. He had spoken to the burly man before the car left. Jack entered into the alley to walk to his home alone. He deliberately preferred to get down from the car in the front alley because he did not want to attract the attention of others. So far, luxury cars have never been seen entering the alley. Loser! Just when Jack saw his tiny boarding house, a loud curse greeted him. Another tirade. Jack stood in place to simply let out a heavy breath. Come here, damn it! The woman was still glaring with her hands clasped on her hips. This is Ross Stern, the landlord. She was short and chubby with shoulder-length curly hair. She couldn't talk to Jack properly. All this time she was just screaming and screaming. Thanks to her, Jack knows many kinds of swearing. Jack drew closer. His eyes widened when he saw Ross's husband coming out of his boarding room carrying a large bag. He recognized the bag. Fred, why did you take my bag? Before the man could answer, his wife grabbed him. Throw the bag in his face. Darling, are you deaf? Fred placed the worn black bag in front of Jack. He shook his head and looked at Jack with a helpless face. Ross pulled his husband's shirt to stagger back. She whispered in an intimidating voice, I asked you to throw it, not give it away. Ross turned back to Jack. She held out her hand toward Jack. Quickly give whatever money you have. Then go to hell. Ross, give me your wallet. Jack had just opened his mouth to speak, but Ross interrupted again. I know you got paid today. Give it all to me, then disappear from this earth. Losers like you are very detrimental. Even trash can be recycled to be reused. Ross, don't overdo it. Shut up. Because of a husband like you, this boarding house business is not growing. You only harbor useless people like this loser. This is a boarding house, not a trash shelter. Actually, I have spent my salary to buy this suit. Jack showed a white coat hanging from his shoulders. Give it to me, Ross shouted again. After receiving the jacket from Jack, she began to examine it. You stupid. You can't even pay the boarding house. How could you buy a suit like this? I should have kicked you out long ago. She pointed her finger. Remember, next month, give me all your salary to pay off all your bills. Otherwise, I will come to King Pizza to kick your head. Jack's shoulders dropped. He didn't say anything, just took something out of the black pouch. Seeing Jack's action, Ross's impatient fuse exploded. Bastard. Fred, give him a punch and kick before he goes. It wasn't until the order was carried out that both of them were wide-eyed at what was in Jack's grasp. Is this enough? Jack handed over dozens of sheets with a picture of Benjamin Franklin. Ross and her husband's jaws just dropped. They stared hard at Jack's hand to make sure it was money and not a leaf. Ross looks at the money Jack gave her. She looked at Fred as she hissed, "It's real." Jack reached into his plastic bag again. "Take this if it's not enough." As fast as lightning, Ross's hand answered him. She smiled broadly. "Jack, where did you get this much money? Is that plastic bag full of money?" Jack nodded casually. "I won the lottery." "Is it true? That's so great. You really are a lucky man. I am very grateful to be your landlord. Just stay right here, Jack. You can tell me if you need anything. Why do you let people who are worse than trash live in your boarding house?" Ross laughed out loud. She patted Jack's arm lightly. "Do not talk like that. I was just too worried about you. You know I'm already treat you like my own son." "Oh, really?" Jack's temples twitched. "Of course." Ross turned to her husband. "Fred, why are you still silent?" she screamed. "Then what should I do?" "Shit. Quickly bring in our son's bag. He had just come home, even his face was also injured. Pack all his things so he can rest quickly." Ross looked back at Jack. She whispered, "I don't understand why I married this idiot. But don't worry. Tell me if he bothers you." "Okay. Tomorrow I will make a delicious breakfast for you. I will also wash your dirty clothes. This suit, I'll give it to you when it's clean and smells good. I will install an air conditioner in your boarding room so it won't be hot, as well as equip it with a TV and other furniture. You can use the toilet at my house if you're standing in line. Anyway, feel free to ask me for any help. Can you do one thing for me? Tell me. I will definitely do it." Ross's eyes lit up at Jack's plastic bag. She thought she would get extra tips. "Shut up." Jack walked into the boarding house, ignoring Ross, who didn't budge at his words. The young man smiled. "This is what being dominant feels like. Day and night that woman scolded and cursed me. Now one word from me instantly changed her." Wanting to forget the bad things that happened at the hotel, Jack intended to just sleep. He had just laid down and closed his eyes when a knock on the door entered his ears. Did Ross come back to beg? "Jack? Are you in there?" "Claire? Why is she here?" muttered Jack after opening his eyes. Claire is Jack's coworker at King Pizza. The two of them are very close. Jack is even friends with Claire's father. In many occasions, they often spend time together. "Yeah, just a moment." Jack got up from the bed. He approached the door still with a raised eyebrow. What important thing was that Claire couldn't wait for the morning to meet him. "What took you so long?" "Daddy will pull my ear if he finds out I'm going to your boarding house in the middle of the night." Claire barged in, leaving Jack in the doorway. "Then why are you here? Sit down quickly." Claire patted the bed, asking Jack to sit beside her. The little room that Jack rented was really bad. Besides, room was narrow, the furniture in it was also too minimalist. There was only a single bed, a plastic cupboard, and a pair of small tables and chairs. "What is it?" said Jack as he sat down. "Wait a moment." Claire opened her bag. She took some money from there to hold out to Jack. "What's this?" "I know your salary is used up to buy a suit for your fiancé. Take this to pay for your boarding house. Don't you have to pay the bills? I'm thankful you didn't get kicked out tonight." "I already paid for it, Claire." Claire quickly pulled Jack's hand. She makes the man grab the money from her. "Don't lie to me. Of all people, I know best how poor you are. I have some savings." Claire laughed loudly. "Yes, I believe everyone has savings, but not you, Jack." Jack smiled amusedly. "Do I look really pathetic?" Of course. I'm still lucky to live in my own house with Dad. But you look at this room of yours. If my father sat here, his shortness of breath would recur. Sometimes I worry that you will kill yourself because you are too poor. This time Jack couldn't help but laugh. He wanted to tell about who he really is. But Jack knew that Claire would laugh at him. A moment ago Sophie and everyone stepped on his pride, and that same night he was called young master. Therefore, he thought to save his identity first. Who would believe that I am the sole heir of the Rudenberg family? As usual, Jack hopped on his bicycle and set off to work. As he rode along the Rudenberg highway, a sense of pride filled his chest. This is my first morning as the sole heir of the Rudenberg family. He thought to himself with a chuckle. In that happy daydream, suddenly the sound of a horn deafening in the ears. Jack was so surprised that he tiptoed and almost lost his balance. Loud laughter sounded from behind. Jack turned to see who was so arrogant as to honk his horn while the road was still wide enough to walk through. Jack gritted his teeth as three young men climbed into a gray BMW 3 Series sports car. It was Sophie's new boyfriend, David, with his friends. The three of them dismounted proudly, closing in on Jack. Meanwhile, Jack was still silent, just staring at David without blinking. He still remembered how last night he was humiliated, beaten, and kicked out of his own engagement party. Are you exercising in the morning with your trashed bicycle? David's friends started to jeer. Gary, haven't you seen his clothes? That's King Pizza's uniform, not a tracksuit. So obviously, he's going to do his noble job delivering pizzas. David chimed in, followed by mocking laughter from his friends. When we want to go to the sports center to train muscles, he's busy thinking about orders. That's why he is so weak. Do you remember? He immediately fell with just a few light punches. Don't remind him of that dark night, Ryan. You'll make him cry later. Jack was in no mood to argue with them at all. He looked ahead and started pedaling again without giving a word. Of course, David and his friends didn't want Jack to just leave. They then returned to the car to catch up with Jack. David quickly drove his car. He overtook and intercepted Jack's bike. Jack was still trying to avoid being lazy to deal with those annoying people. However, David and his friends soon descended. They spread their arms to block Jack, who was about to pass. Annoyed, Jack got off his bike. What do you want? Jack's first sentence sounded cold and intimidating. Wow, is this pizza delivery man mad? He scared me, David. I'm very busy. If you don't have work on the weekends, come to the shop to help make the pizza dough. You will be rewarded for that. God damn it. Gary stepped up to give a punch to Jack, who dared to taunt them. However, David immediately restrained him. Calm down, Gary. We beat up this loser last night. The wound on his temple isn't even dry yet. Move. Jack's face was very cold. Be patient, dude. You haven't even heard how passionate I was that night with Sophie last night. My goodness, your ex was so hot. In bed she was so dash. David broke off, seeing Jack close his eyes with his jaw clenched. What's wrong, Jack? Don't you like hearing hot stories? That's none of my business. Now step aside. I have to work. Don't tell me you've never slept with Sophie? Oh, no wonder there are bloodstains left. Turns out Shoppy is still dash. Move, Jack shouted, interrupting David's story. However, Sophie was once his idol. Hearing another man tell of a passionate night with Sophie made his heart feel like it had been stabbed by hundreds of daggers. What if we don't want to step aside? Then I will dash. Not until Jack finished his sentence. Gary interjected. What? Beat us up? Or kneel and kiss our feet, begging us to make way for a loser like you? Jack took a deep breath. Look, it's Sophie. He pointed in a direction. The three youths who confronted him turned their heads, deluded. He took a chance by escaping. God damn it. The loser fooled us. Gary slammed a fist into his own hand, watching Jack run away. We have to go after him. That old pizza delivery bike can't keep up with your speed, David. David tugged at the corner of his lips. He tapped Gary on the shoulder as he said, Calm down, guys. Until then, Jack won't be able to fool us. How can a fool be fooling others? See how I will repay him. Are we going to visit King Pizza? Sounds interesting. It's been a long time since we've tasted burgers there. A little mess would make things a lot more fun, right? Gary smiled slyly. Loudly, he agreed to Ryan's rotten idea. However, David showed different things. The young man shook his head. Not us, but Sophie. My girlfriend will teach a valuable lesson to her ex-boyfriend.